Welcome back into part 2 of my mixed media project for my mom's happy birthday. In this video, I'm actually going to be drawing the subject matter, which is actually going to be this little Halloween-ish gnome. She loves gnomes so much, and I love Halloween, so it's a little bit of me, a little bit of her. And what I'm going to draw with is called a Stabilo-Wall pencil. And it's water soluble, so if I'm drawing and I don't like something, I can wipe it off, but it's water soluble. So I want to show you that once you get it wet, so when I go in later with Mod Podge to like do some sealing and stuff, it will react, or it will activate it. So that's something to keep in mind if you don't want to, like it'll totally activate. So I've used it enough that I'm comfortable with it. When I first started using it, it was a little bit scary. But again, even once it's activated, you can use your brush to kind of put it back where you want to. You could also use a pencil. It's just hard to see and you can't erase it very well. You could use a white charcoal pencil as well. I've used that in a drawing before. I'll link that above. You could draw it first on a separate piece of paper, and then you could actually put carbon paper down and kind of trace over it. I mean, those are a couple different ways to actually get your drawing onto your surface. But I'm just going to kind of dive in. I'm just using this because it's a fairly simple drawing. I say simple, everything's relative, right? But I'm confident that I can do it with this pencil, and I'm just gonna dig right in. I always have my reference kind of right next to me. Now, working on something as long as I am, I would probably use this at my easel, but I don't totally have that set up really for filming. So I'm just gonna make it work like this. The best way I can say to put stuff in is to kind of map it out first. So I'm gonna loosely put kind of a circle down here where I want my pumpkin to be. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit for you. You'll see it more whenever I reach up a little bit higher. Okay, and then I'll probably put the nose. Like, this is one of the reasons I left this spot white and clear of the collage, because I knew that the little bit of the face would be right here. Kind of map in where I want the little mitten hands to be. At this point, I can actually take some just run-of-the-mill wet wipes, and I can actually go in and just kind of erase that. Any extra lines that I don't really need. Just kind of swiping it off. But this does show you also like how much it'll activate. But it kind of gets it so I kind of know what I'm actually working with, where I want my actual lines to be. And I can roughly put in the mustache. And honestly, I could have just went ahead and drawn in the lines of the pumpkin first. I like the gourdy type of pumpkins. So those are the ones that I tend to draw the most. I think they're cute. And then I can just go in and kind of clean off any lines that I don't like. When I paint over it, it'll disappear too, but doing it this way, I just kind of don't lose my spot. paper plate that I just cover with tin foil. That way I can just keep reusing it. I'm using acrylic paints. I will list all my supplies as usual in the description box, so you'll know what I'm using if you want to use the same things, but as always, feel free to use whatever you have on hand. When I'm using acrylics, I do not use my watercolor brushes or really any fancy brushes. I use just some kind of older brushes. So I'll start with the pumpkin and I'll probably go up into the beard a little bit, that way there's no gap, because with acrylics, you start like with the back layer and work your way front. I like to use a few different colors. So I have like a light, a medium, and a dark range. And I kind of mix and match. And when I'm using craft paint, like something like this, I don't use a ton of water because it's already thinned out. But when I'm using my more artist grade, I will add water because it's super thick. I have water to my right, and then I always have a paper towel in my hand. You could also paint everything with white gesso first if you didn't want any of the background to show. I'm going to be okay if some of it peeks through because that's one of the reasons I put it on there. You can see when I go to put this on how it activates that pencil. So I'll kind of keep wiping my brush off as I go, but it also kind of creates shadows, which is kind of neat. But once you've gone over it and it's been covered, it won't activate again. I don't know why I started with the yellow anyway. Because I'm used to working with watercolors, that's why. You also usually start with dark to light when it comes to acrylics, so I gotta retrain my brain. So you can see how it really activated that pencil, but it actually will look kind of like it adds some shadows, which is nice. Then I'll kind of go in and smooth out any of the paint that left kind of like a little ridge. And then I'm gonna let this part dry for a minute and go work on a little bit of a different part. Next, I'm gonna start with just kind of the tip of the hat, and I'm gonna make it candy corn colors because I am pro candy corn. You'll have to let me know in the comments if you're yay or nay on the candy corn. I love it. Since this is gonna be white, since it's the tip of the hat, which is the candy corn, I'm gonna go ahead and go in with a little bit of white gesso first. I'm also going to go over everything with black Posca. I don't mind if there's a kind of a harsher edge left. I like to put the lightest color kind of in the part that would be highlighted, which is like the roundest part. I like to just have a little bit of every color showing. I think it gives a nice contrast and highlights and dimension. Put some of that red kind of in the crease there as well. I always talk about directionality, so I'm going with the flow of the roundness of the pumpkin as I'm putting my brush strokes in. I'm going vertical, but also kind of curved to follow the line of the pumpkin. If you think the red's too strong, you can just go back over a little bit with the orange and it'll just kind of blend. Oops, I went in with the red. I think my red paint might be old. It's not going on very easily. I just have one hand that flows easier than the other. Drives me crazy. So I'm going to show you, this is what it looks like, and you can still kind of see the paper through, and I'm trying to kind of show you if you can see like the texture that's from the paper. Hopefully you can kind of see it. That looks better. So that's just, it just gives more interest, and I think it's really neat to use collage backgrounds and mixed media. It's really fun. I'm going to go back up to the hat here. I'm going to go in with my regular white. The only reason I'm not just leaving the white gesso as the final color is simply because it dries completely matte, and a lot of acrylics dry with like a little bit of shine in them because they're like kind of plasticky. So I kind of want the same effect for all the colors, so that's why I'm going to go ahead and put in the white acrylic. So I'm going to use the Stabilo All again to sketch in the beard and mustache again, since I kind of lost it when I painted in the pumpkin. So I'm going to go in with white acrylic, and it will mix with the Stabilo All and hypothetically be able to create some dimension, make some blacks and grays. So I'll probably have to go back in as well, but that's what we're going to kind of start with. Probably just go ahead and go through them, the little mittens just a little bit so I make sure there's no gap later. And I'm also going into the nose just a little bit as well. Remember, as you're painting the hair of the beard and the mustache, directionality is important. You want to go with the flow of each of those areas. And after I go in and kind of put the first coat in, I'm going to start building out with a little bit more white on top to kind of start creating the shadows and some highlights as well. I'm gonna use kind of short strokes here. Directionality again, kind of like it goes like parentheses around the beard and then kind of straight in the center. I'm gonna go up into the mustache a little bit and then I'll fix it. And I'm gonna mix a little bit of black, a little bit of that, and put just a little bit in there just to get a little bit of a little bit more contrast. Again, I'm just using short strokes in the direction that I want the flow of the beard to look like it's going in. Leave that like that for now. And then I'm going to go back up into the hat and do the next color, which is yellow. I guess the whole candy corn issue is like people get they either super hate it or they super love it, and it just cracks me up. My favorite way I love the little pumpkins, just to interrupt myself, those teeny tiny little baby candy corn pumpkins, they're so good. But when I have regular candy corns, I love to mix them with peanuts, and that's kind of like a payday. It's so good. Just saying, if you haven't had it yet, try it. And don't come at me with your hate in the comments if you don't like them. I'm gonna dry the beard really quick so I can go ahead and put in the nose and the little hands. I'm gonna call mittens because I'm gonna color them purple. Go ahead and paint the nose, and that's gonna be green because it's for Halloween and maybe he's dressed up. It's fun to just experiment and just go crazy, you know, sometimes with silly colors. At least I think so. Again, I'm going with the flow of the nose. It is so hard for me not to turn my painting when I'm trying to do circles, especially. One side always looks a little wonked. to take a little bit of the white and mix a little bit of white and green together. And I'm just going to go in and add a little bit of that lighter color kind of along the top, or the front part, if you will. It'll give the illusion of like a 3D effect. And then I can go in with a little bit more white even. Kind of wipe off my brush, pick up a little bit of that green, just blend that in a little bit. And then I can wipe my brush off again and kind of go back in with that first green. It's a little bit of back and forth when you're blending. Here we go. So cute. And then I'm gonna basically kind of do the same thing that I did with the nose with the mittens, where I'll go in and give it another coat, but then I'm going to add a little bit of white as well. Go to this part of the hat. I'm going to be using kind of a mixture of those two, maybe all three as well. I just want to make sure it's different than here. I think I went through about 275 paper towels with this project. I always use so many when I use acrylics. I keep wiping my brush off on my paper towel because I'm picking up the Stabilo All pencil with the paint, so I just want to make sure that I'm continuing to clean off my brush. Probably should have painted the hat maybe before the mittens. It's fine. I can always fix it. It's been a while since I've made a mixed media piece like this. It is one of my favorite mediums. It's just really time consuming, so I can't always fit it in. But since it's special, I'm making time today. My mom's the best. Best mom ever. Working in a lot smaller areas and I want more control, I hold my brush way closer to the bristles. That's same with my pencil, pen, marker, whatever. Just a little tip for you. For this part, I am going to have to turn it so I can get my brush right up against that nose. Dry all this, and then I'm gonna paint the hat again one more time. Okay, so I went ahead and did a couple more coats off camera, and I painted the sides purple. And now I'm gonna go in. These are called gelatos. They're like they're kind of like a really soft crayon, if you will, but they're blendable. So it's kind of nice to be able to go in and put some shadows and different things with those instead of always having to rely on paint, which can be a little harder sometimes. So I'm going to use these this time instead, kind of show you what these are all about. Faber Castell is one of the ones that I really love. And then King Art is actually a pretty decent one too. Right now I'm just going to test and see if this is dark enough. Oh, that's not too bad. So you just kind of draw it on, and then you can like spread it around with your finger, but you can use it just to kind of put a little bit of a shadow in. There would be a shadow around the nose. A lot of these techniques and things that I'm doing, I learned. I've mentioned her before, Karen Campbell. She's such a fun artist. I've taken a lot of her classes. I'll link her information as well in the description box if you want to check her out. These are also water soluble, so see, it gives a little bit of a shadow there, which means when I go in with the Mod Podge, this will move a little bit as well. It's not too bad, but it will move a little bit. But I still want to go in and begin mapping out where like the creases in the hat would be. Just a way to kind of break it up and definitely add some interest. And like I said, building shadows. And this is another thing, if you didn't like it, you can rub it off with a wet wipe. In between each color, I will kind of just wipe my finger off so that I don't transfer it into the other color. This might not be dark enough, we'll see. Of course, this is just kind of when it comes to mixed media, well, and anything, it's all about the layers. That's what builds interest and texture. For the white, I think I might just use a little bit of gray. So there's a little bit of that orange that got where the green is, so I'm going to just kind of wipe that off. And then I am going to go in with a little bit of green, maybe a mid-tone green, just to kind of blend all those together a little bit. To kind of draw it on like you will with a crayon, and then you just kind of smush it with your finger. These are really cool. I decided to go ahead and bring in some orange and yellow back into the pumpkin. I thought it got a little bit too dark. Kind of looking for something that's a little bit stronger around the hat. When you create more depth and dimension, it just makes things look more 3D. And you can even actually start building in a little bit of highlight with the white. So the next step is going to be Mod Podge. We're going to seal this layer in. And then we're going to bring in Posca pens and some Pitt pens just to add some last details, and then we'll be done. So I will go get my Mod Podge and I'm going to go ahead and cover this. Actually, I'll show you a little bit of it so you can see how it activates potentially. Before putting the Mod Podge on, you can actually take a wet wipe and kind of go around all the edges and get any extra Stabilo All pencil that is still on there. That way you don't have to worry about that smudging when you put the Mod Podge on. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and Mod Podge this. I'm going to grab all my stuff. I'll be right back. So I got my Mod Podge. That's what this is. I poured some in my little cup again. And I'm going to start with the small brush. I also have a big one. But I'm going to start, and I always have a paper towel. Let me grab one. Because as I'm putting it on, I will start lifting some of those colors. So I want to make sure I'm not getting them in other colors. And again, directionality matters. So I'll start up here, maybe in the yellow. You don't want to go over it 100 times. Just get it on there, and I will be Mod Podging the whole thing, but I am just starting with the Gnome first, just so I can make sure I get him covered in real good. When you go around the rest of the canvas, make sure that you really cover your collage. If there's any edges that you think are sticking up or anything, you got to make sure that you really get those pressed down with the Mod Podge. And I also do all of the sides as well. So that way it's just one big cohesive covering with the Mod Podge. Kind of look at it at an angle and see if you have any spots that you missed. And you want to try, like I said, you want to try to make sure it's pretty smooth. You don't want to have any like huge bubbles. And the reason directionality matters is because it will show your brush strokes once it's dry. Now I'm gonna dry this and then I'll be back. Okay, we're in the home stretch. The last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some Pitt pens, which has India ink in them, and build a little bit more shading with these. And then I'm gonna use black and white acrylic Posca pens. And then I'll put one more layer of Mod Podge and then we'll be done. So these, you just draw on as well, like we did with the gelatos. And these you can kind of mush as well. It just helps build some more layers. The Pitt pens can also be wiped off with a wet wipe. If you put it someplace and you don't like it, you can just use a wet wipe and also wipe it off that way. I'm gonna start outlining and adding highlights with the Posca pens. They're acrylic markers. I've been playing with acrylic markers lately. This is how I usually use acrylic markers in something like this. Sometimes if you're quick, you can wipe off the Posca pen since it's on Mod Podge. Different line weights that I like to do, so there's different size markers. So I'm going to use a little bit of a smaller marker for the lines that I'm going to put inside. think that's it. I think I'm done. Mixed media pieces are definitely time consuming, and this is a very large one. I did put a little shadow as well underneath the pumpkin. Like you can see the textures that kind of come through with the paper. I think these are so fun, and I hope that my mom likes it, and I appreciate you being here with me to tackle this project. I can't wait to see what mixed media project you come up with. As always, you can tag me on Instagram with any of your artwork. I would love to see what you're working on, and if you enjoyed this video, I hope you'll give it a thumbs up and leave me some love in the comments. Thank you again so much, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye.